Alright, this is a couple days after I made the first 3 parts to this video. I have 2 things. Probably nobody is going to see this. I may upload it on a different channel eventually. But apparently this channel is shadow banned. None of these videos are being actually showed to anyone through YouTube's algorithm because YouTube's algorithm is ass. So I'm mostly making this for me so I can get my feelings out. I never really expected anybody to see this in the first place, but you know, I may upload it on a different channel. I don't know. If somebody is seeing this, congratulations. You know my thoughts on these matters. The other thing is, I mentioned that he was expressing, Matt Powell was expressing disbelief that dinosaur corpses could be preserved for millions of years. And the thing with that is that the reason why things get broken down is because of bacteria that eat it. That's why dead bodies get broken down after predators have already had their fill. The only thing you really need to do to preserve a dead body is to have an environment where the things that break down the dead bodies are not there. Sorry about that if you heard that. Yeah, that's all you need to do to preserve something, is get rid of the things that make it deteriorate. And over the course of millions of years, billions even, it is entirely possible for that to happen. You've got a whole bunch of time, whole bunch of dead things over that time. Chances are that's going to happen sooner or later, that a dead body is going to be preserved. It really isn't as fantastical as he makes it out to be. But let's continue this.
Buried and then pushed up the mountain through rapid plate tectonics, catastrophic plate tectonics. Because when a clam dies naturally in nature, it opens up because the muscle relaxes and a scavenger will come and eat
Once again, sometimes that may not happen.
them. These clams were closed shut. They were sealed by something so powerful that they could not even open when they died.
Really doesn't take something that powerful. In fact, if the real reason was a flood, the clams would be open. Because at the top of the mountain, the water pressure would not be enough to keep it closed. There wouldn't be anything to keep it closed if a flood was the answer. So the proof of the clams being closed, is actually proof that the flood didn't happen.
Mount Everest is great evidence of Noah's flood because you're not going to get a mountain that big on this earth unless a catastrophic event takes place. And if you get a mountain that huge, that means that the event must have happened very...
It's not that Mount Everest is huge, it's that it's relatively new. Yeah, it's huge, but that could have easily happened for mountains that are hundreds of thousands to millions of years old, but they've had time to experience the rain, all of the forces that cause erosion. So they're not as tall as they once were. The same thing causes all mountains to form. It's plate tectonics. And the same thing causes the earth to be level. Erosion. You don't have to be a geologist to understand that the longer a mountain exists, the shorter it's going to become. You know, unless the plate tectonics at work are, you know, are still going. I know there are a few mountains, I don't know which. I think there's even a whole mountain range that is actually getting taller and taller and taller because the plate tectonics that created them are still doing what they were doing when the mountains were formed.
Quickly, because mountains are actually eroding over time. Everything is going to erode flat over time. Mountains are
all it takes is a positive rate in change in height. That's all it takes. It doesn't take it to be super fast. It doesn't need to have a huge burst in height. It just doesn't. The reason why Mount Everest is as high as it is because the rate in which it has risen just so happens to be faster than the rate it has eroded over its life. The net change just so happens to be positive.
Eroding, hills are eroding, and yes, evolutionists make the claim that the plates are moving really slowly and that's what's forming the mountains. Look,
that's not what evolutionists say. That's what geologists say. And people who actually listen to the people whose job it is to know that shit.
Gravity is going to pull those mountains down faster than they can be.
That's not how gravity works. Yes, gravity pulls things in. But the way that would happen is it would pull in the heavier rock, the more dense rock, and it would pull it down and down and down. And then you know what would happen? It would get melted into the layer of earth that is molten rock. That's not, like, yeah, that's how it would work. If there was a rock just floating in air, it would fall to the ground. Sorry if you hear anything. I'm doing this during the day instead of late at night, like I did the other time.
Brought up by plate tectonics. If the plates are only moving 1 to 2 inches per year and slowly changing the landscape, that's not going to create something like this. It's not going to create...
Over a long time, yes it will. And he says a couple inches every year. That is a substantial amount. Like, that is a noticeable amount. And I'd be willing to bet that it's faster than the rate of erosion as well.
Any mountain. In fact, everything would just be flat everywhere. So mountains are...
Like I said, all it requires is a net positive change in height. That's all it requires.
Are great evidence of Noah's flood. A well-preserved whale fossil has been discovered on a California mountain. The nearly intact fossil...
Do you know how long whales have existed. It takes millions of years for any kind of animal to evolve into something else. How about you date that whale fossil? Oh, right, you're not qualified to. How about the scientists date that fossil? Did you find a date for how old that fossil is in that article that you found? Because I'd be willing to bet that date was actually a very, very long time ago. Before your whole creationist myth actually shows is possible. Oh, sorry, dictates is possible, because your Bible doesn't show shit.
Fossil of a whale has been unearthed at a construction site in Santa Cruz County. After reading this, the question then becomes, how does a whale get to the top of a mountain?
It doesn't. It swims in the ocean. And you know what happens when it swims in the ocean? It dies. It gets buried by sediment. You know what that sediment is? The sand at the bottom of the ocean. You know why I know that it didn't die at the top of that mountain? Because the top of the mountain is already solidified. There isn't going to be any sediment at the top of a mountain. It's all going to be rock. How the fuck did a whale skeleton penetrate rock and then cover its tracks, Matt Powell? It got covered by sediment when it was at the bottom of the ocean, and then a mountain formed right where that whale fossil was covered. The tectonic plates rubbed up against each other, going and creating the crust going up, and then the whale fossil was taken with it.
The only explanation is that the whale was catastrophically buried in Noah's flood.
Catastrophically buried in stone? How? What is going through your mind? You could have stopped this farce by just doing a little bit of research. Google, how are fossils formed? And you wouldn't be this stupid.
You find sea life on every single mountain. That's why you find clams.
Yeah, because the stuff that used to be where the mountain used to be got pushed up with the mountain. Ever notice how California is right up against the coast? It's right next to the ocean. How do you think, what kind of source material do you think these mountains were made of?
On mountains that are in the closed position, because we're talking about catastrophic processes that placed these organisms.
No catastrophic process could have buried an actual skeleton in stone, and then there was no sign of it. That's not how that works.
there. We also find trees that go through millions of years of geologic time.
Once again, I don't know how this happens, but let's do a quick Google search, shall we? Let's do a quick Google search. In a second. Oh, don't show that. I don't know why that's there. Let's see. Yeah. Fucking. Why? Yeah. Why is the sky blue? People are fucking stupid. Why do we see trees buried throughout multiple geological layers? Kent Hovind. This is a creationist. That is not a reliable source. This is what I felt at the end of episode 3. Let's see. Upright. Referring to is polystrate fossils. Polystrate fossils are fossils that extend through multiple layers of sedimentary rock, often appearing to be vertical or at an angle rather than lying horizontally. These fossils are frequently found in coal seams and in other sedimentary rock formations. Polystrate fossils are not evidence against the vast age of the Earth or the process of fossilization itself. Instead, they provide valuable insight into geological processes that have occurred over millions of years. There are several explanations for how polystrate fossils can be found upright through layers of rock. Rapid burial, which is what creates fossils. When a tree or other organism is rapidly buried by sediment, such as during a volcanic eruption, landslide, or flood, it can become preserved in an upright position. As subsequent layers of sediment accumulate around it, over time the buried... Okay. So, that's actually very easy. They get buried, and it's only over millions of years that each sedimentary layer actually turns to rock, is what I'm seeing here. I believe that's what that means. So, yeah, that's easy to understand. Again, quick Google search. Differential erosion. In some cases, polystrate fossils may be the result of different erosion, where softer sedimentary layers erode more quickly than harder layers. This can expose the vertical fossil, giving the appearance that it extends through multiple layers of rock. Also, very easy to understand. Obviously, like I said earlier, the denser rock goes lower and the less dense rock is higher. So, and obviously the less dense rock is going to erode faster. very easy to understand. Tectonic activity. Geological forces such as uplift, folding, and faulting can cause rock layers to be tilted or overturned. This explains why some of them are found upside down. Polystrate fossils may be found in these tilted layers, giving the impression that they extended through multiple layers of rock. Also could give the impression that they are upside down, when in reality they didn't start that way. Let's see. 4. Subsidence. Actually, you know what? I think you guys get it. I don't know why this opened in another tab. Alright. So, very easy to understand. Like, with a basic knowledge of geology that I have, basic knowledge, don't even need a degree, you can understand why this happens.
That means that these layers are not millions of years old, that they didn't take that much time to accumulate, that what actually caused them to accumulate was rapid succession of layers being laid down by water. And this had to have been the case because
No, that's not how that works at all. That's not how that works at all. That's not how... I don't know what more I can say on that. That's just not how that works.
Trees, when they die, they fall over. Well, what tree is going to stand for millions of years as layers...
We just went over multiple ways of how that could have happened. It could have been rapidly buried all in one go, keeping it upright, or it could have fallen over, been buried by sediment, and then actual geological processes could have maneuvered it upright.
Slowly accumulate around it. So these polystratofossils, which is what they're called, is some of the greatest evidence of no...
So he did do research. He did research enough to know what they're called, and not enough to know how they formed, or enough to know how they formed, and just lie to his viewers. Pretty much.
Was flood, and of the fact that layers don't take millions of years to form. The Grand Canyon's layers did not take millions of years of rainfall. It took one gigantic...
I'm sorry, but that's also not how that works. If it was one gigantic flood, it wouldn't have eroded in that way. It just wouldn't have. It would have eroded the top layers, not like slivers into the earth. That's not how that works. The reason why water erosion works is because it has to find the easiest path. That's how it works. It finds the easiest path. There's no reason for it to find the easiest path if literally the whole surface is covered in water. A giant flood would not have caused the Grand Canyon. It straight up couldn't have.
Catastrophic event. And some skeptics will say that little local floods could cause these layers to form around the trees. Well, whatever created these fossils had to have been so catastrophic because the trees, many of them, are upside down. Obviously, some of these trees were ripped out by
We just went over the fact that they can be flipped in any which direction.
literal earthquakes, and they floated around for a while, became waterlogged, went upside down into these layers that were still soft, and then all of those layers solidified around them, and the tree and the layers together became fossilized in one event. This I find...
Yeah, it was fossilized in one event, and then it was buried in one event, then fossilized, and then the layers of sediment became rock in different time frames.
Interesting. It says the monkeys that sailed across the Atlantic to South America. Monkeys suddenly appeared in South America about 40 million years ago. Unlikely though it may seem, they probably sailed there from Africa. Prehistoric monkeys traveled 900 miles between continents on rafts. The reason that atheists will promote this idea that monkeys surfed from Africa to South America...
Again, atheism says nothing about that. Atheism says nothing about evolution. Evolution says nothing about most of the things in this video. Do not conflate these terms. It makes you sound like a fucking moron.
Because they're trying to explain how monkey fossils got to South America. Well, number one, you find a fossil in South America. You can't just conclude that monkeys surfed over there. I mean, even if they were, they still got buried and killed. And this looks more to me like Noah's flood was actually the cause of these findings, because to get a fossil, you have to have rapid burial. And not only that, if you're finding monkey fossils in places where they're not supposed to be, the flood is what would shuffle up all of this biology and put it in all sorts of different places for...
I'm sorry, but the flood would have had to go on for tens of thousands of years for it to have actually brought skeletons of... Oh, wait, no, it couldn't have in the first place at all, because they would have had to live long enough to reach the other continent, which means they would have had to build rafts anyway. And then, because if they were to die, they would have either been fossilized in the area that they died, or they would have decomposed. So there's literally no way that what he's saying could have happened.
Us to find later. And so Noah's flood is what put these fossils there. It's not that the monkeys surfed across the ocean 34 million years ago.
Oh god. Literally the only... God damn. Literally the only reason that this would have happened with his flood idea is that they would have to have used rafts or floated on something.
It's that God allowed the earth to be flooded because of the wickedness of man. And God decided to start over with Noah and his family. And that's totally fine. That's up to...
I'd like to point out that that is a shit ton of incest. Like, a shit ton of incest. For his family, and only his family, to have restarted humanity.
To God.
We would have seen so many genetic just deteriorations with that much incest. In fact, the human race probably would have been sterilized from that much incest.
Shouldn't consider ourselves smarter than God or have an issue with God for wiping out the planet. He did it once. He could do it again if he wanted to, via fire. And the Bible even tells us that he will. The Bible says the elements will melt.
No evidence. He's just saying things and positing them as fact.
With a fervent heat. God does have wrath towards people who hate him. You shouldn't hate your creator. You should love.
I can't hate something I don't think exists.
Your creator. They claim that dinosaurs once crossed oceans. They say the first duck-billed dinosaur fossil was discovered in Africa, so again, you have an instance where dinosaur fossils are found out of place. What do we believe? Do we believe they surfed over there, or do we believe that Noah's flood put these fossils in these?
I think everybody knows why dinosaurs were in every continent, but just in case you don't, there used to be what's called a megacontinent. You know, where all of the Earth is concentrated in one area and it's not separated. In fact, you can see where different continents would have fit together on a world map. The reason is because they existed when the megacontinent existed. And when the Earth started to drift apart, some stayed on one side, some stayed on the other. That's why there was life on almost every continent. Not sure if there was any on Antarctica.
Positions. Noah's flood is the explanation for all of these things, and if you don't believe in Noah's flood,
once again, there is no way Noah's flood could have even done that.
Then this is what you're left with. You have to believe stuff like this, and I want to encourage you to be rational and logical.
I love how this chapter is just called monkeys. like you've got. I'm sorry, but this is funny to me. You've got the case for creation. God created the world. Water or ocean. Life was designed by God. Scientific analysis. Noah's flood. And monkeys. Oh my god, the next one is called chickens. That's so funny to me. Like, I feel like you just gave up. I feel like you just gave up and just started. That's so funny.
Logical, and not believe things that are based in lies. And some biological organisms are so unique from others that even Darwinists will claim that they could not have evolved by Darwinian means. And so squids and
Are you going to give us an actual quote? Or are you just saying words and hoping people believe you?
octopi are some of those creatures that many claim could not have evolved, so they have to explain how they are some of those creatures that by Darwinian means. And so squids and octopi are some of those creatures that many claim could not have evolved, so they have to.
Who is actually saying that squids and octopi couldn't have evolved? Because that's bullshit. The best proof for that is that there are multiple kinds of squids and octopi. How the fuck do you think multiple kinds came about? Oh, Right. You think God created them all individually. No. They evolved. In fact, how did squids and octopus evolve? As if octopuses and other cephalopods are not already strange enough, they may have found a way to evolve that is foreign to practically all other multicellular organisms on the planet. For most animals, changes that might prove beneficial to the organism primarily occur at the beginning of the molecular production process. Mutations occur in DNA that are then transcribed into RNA. The RNA is then translated into altered protein. Not for cephalopods, at least not entirely. A new study published in Cell Reports, these aquarium oddities can modify the proteins found in their bodies without having to change the basic sequence of their DNA blueprint. As a result, it looks as if cephalopods have changed very slowly over the eons of their existence. The findings also suggest that octopuses and their tentacled cousins may be a lot older than previously thought. The new paper reports on the process called RNA editing, which involves enzymes swapping out one RNA base, nitrogen base letter in the RNA/DNA alphabet, for another, presumably in the interest of an organism adapting to its environment. RNA editing is rarely employed in most animals. Among 20,000 or so genes found in humans, for example, only a few dozen sites are thought to change their RNA so that it no longer matches the original DNA template. So, extensive research, because, yeah, we didn't know how it happened. That doesn't mean that the scientists just assumed God did it. It means we figured out why, Matt Powell. Our love for curiosity is what drives us to actually figure out why, not just assume God did it.
Explain how they got here. And in this paper here, in Progress in Biophysics and Molecular...
It says Darwinian, I believe, for the pause. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Darwinian evolution doesn't explain everything, because no model is perfect. No model is perfect. That's why we have neo-Darwinism, and why in a decade or so, maybe less, we'll have something new to explain this stuff.
Biology, it states this, that it's plausible then to suggest that they seem to be borrowed from a far distant future, quote-unquote, in terms of terrestrial evolution, or more realistically from the cosmos at large.
Okay, I don't know what he's going to say about this, but it seems that he's going to take this much more literally than it's meant to be. Far distant future in terms of terrestrial evolution. That just means that for the most part, we, like terrestrial creatures that walk the land, for the most part, haven't been able to do this. Sorry about that. It just means that most creatures haven't figured out how to do this. That's all it means.
So what they're claiming is that octopi and squid are so unique that they couldn't have evolved, so they must be aliens.
Not at all where I thought that was going. That is so monumentally stupid. That is not at all what that means. What the fuck? This guy thinks that squids... This guy thinks that scientists think the squids are aliens? No, that's not what that means. That's not what that means, you colossal fuckwit. What the hell? That is so bonkers that I did not expect that at all. Oh my god.
And the theory is that they rode through the atmosphere on a comet which would have toasted them. It's much easier to say that God created them. Actually, it takes rational thoughts.
What? They rode through the atmosphere? What is this guy smoking? Because, honestly, I'd like to have a good time. Like, good God, what is this guy talking about?
To understand that God created them. Some people actually think that dinosaurs farted themselves to death. No joke.
What? No, nobody thinks that.
You can look it up. It is really wild.
Okay, so I highly doubt that's what the article is actually saying, and if it is, it's probably satire. Let's see. Dinosaurs gas themselves into extinction. Dinosaurs gassed themselves into extinction. Article. First result. Much like death by aliens, the idea that dinosaurs farted themselves into extinction was never a scientific hypothesis. Let's see what this actually says. Okay. This is not saying they farted themselves to death, Matt Powell. If you had actually read the second paragraph in the article, it says that the waste was such a colossal amount that, yeah, that makes sense. They were massive and there were a lot of them. That the waste polluted the air enough to warm the planet. That does not mean that it was what caused the extinction at all. In fact, enough to warm the planet to hasten their own eventual demise. That doesn't mean it killed them. It just means that if it were let to go on further, it probably would have killed them. It's so funny that people can read the headline to an article and make all kinds of assumptions just based on the headline of the article. You know that headlines of articles are supposed to be hyperbolic to get clicks, right?
I actually called some people out on that who were saying that to others. There was a group of people, I think it was RT, they said that this somehow proves that the Creation Museum is ridiculous and creation science is false because dinosaurs passed too much gas and killed themselves.
Edit if anybody is in the comments going, "Oh, you're such a child for playing on a DS." You're an old fuck. I enjoy it. It was part of my childhood. Go fuck yourself.
Off with their own flatulence. Some of these theories are really wild and some people do actually believe them. And in this kid's book,
people believe them because they're morons. Like you, Matt Powell.
You can see here it says, question, are chickens related to the T-Rex? Answer, yes. Science has revealed compelling evidence that the T-Rex actually evolved into a chicken.
Okay, this is boiling it down to a way too simple result. The T-Rexes most likely evolved into many things, not just chickens. The chickens may be the closest related to their ancestor, but the T-Rexes didn't just evolve into chickens. That's not how evolution works.
So from Jurassic Park's worst monster to lunch at KFC, that's what they think. They literally...
Off topic, I would love to see what T-Rex tastes like, because that seems really fucking cool. But evolution works by figuring out what will help the creature survive. Big giant predator uses up way too much energy to be efficient. So it probably got smaller and smaller and smaller. Down the line, it became an omnivore. Chickens are omnivores. It became an omnivore because hunting for its food just used up too much energy. Same reason why they got smaller over time. Eventually, you've got chickens. The same chemical structure is used for scales as opposed to feathers. That's all it really took, is it got smaller to get more energy efficient. It started becoming an omnivore so it could take in energy from more sources. And it swapped its scales for feathers for some reason. That's all it takes.
think that chickens are descendants of dinosaurs. And some of them will say, well, every bird in the sky is a dinosaur.
We're descendants from dinosaurs too. Pretty much everything that is land dwelling, and quite a few things that are ocean dwelling as well. Almost everything that's land dwelling. I'm not going to say it as an absolute because I'm not a fucking Christian, but almost everything living on the land and a substantial amount of things living in the ocean evolved from what were dinosaurs at the time, because the time frame that dinosaurs existed is so colossal that pretty much everything had to go through it.
Dinosaur. Let's go ahead and get back on track. So in the creation model, we believe that mankind was designed, but in evolution they teach that humans descended from primates. And I don't
Mentioned this at the very beginning. We didn't descend from primates. We are primates.
don't have long to get into this because this is kind of just a basic seminar. It has a lot of basics in it. We don't really go super deep into any of these topics, though we could.
It also does not have any truth in it. I think there may have been a couple true things this guy has said throughout the entire half of this fucking video.
But I'd like to point out that it's very rational to understand that two humans conceived
Rational does not mean true.
the world's population and that we didn't descend from primates.
It's also not rational to think that either. Because, oh my lord, the incest that would require. You think it's bad, or sorry, I said it's bad that the world, after the flood that they suppose came from one family, that happened twice according to them. There should be irreparable defects across the whole human population if that were the case.
And some people are now claiming that one of our earliest ancestors was a jellyfish. What makes more sense? Come on.
This is really funny to me because it's not actually a jellyfish. It's just a label we put on it to make it understandable for what we know of today. It wasn't a jellyfish. Even if what he is saying is true, it wasn't an actual jellyfish. Jellyfish are just the closest thing we can equate it to.
That a jellyfish conceived all of mankind over time, that somehow
I love that he's only using the headlines because it's so easy to disprove. Because they're intentionally hyperbolic. They're not actually saying humans came from jellyfish. Not the jellyfish that exists today.
a family of jellyfish turned into a family of people over a bunch of successive generations, or that
Not just a bunch of successive generations, hundreds of millions of generations.
two people conceived the world population.
Possibly more than that.
Adam and Eve were real people who actually existed in the past. And the alternative to Adam and Eve
And your proof of that is what?
is the assertion that biological organisms somehow came alive in the water. Remember, water destroys them. But even if we enter into fantasy land and pretend that it's true, that water created this organic material that turned into life, and all of this life started to diversify, mutations would have killed these organisms before they could have even diversified.
And the mutations, the really faulty mutations that would occur from the incest hole that you think humans came out of, wouldn't have killed them? Dude, what are you smoking? Give me some. That sounds like a good time.
They teach in evolution that we mutated from a single-celled organism to humans over time. Mutations are the reasons for cancer, Down syndrome, and autism. Sickle cell.
Okay. Go fuck yourself. If he starts talking about how autism is this evil, it's Satan and all this, I might just fucking punch my monitor. For those of you who don't know, I am autistic. I do not take kindly to when Christians do this bullshit, because it is incredibly disrespectful. It is incredibly rude to sit there and go, oh, your whole existence is sin because of things you can't control. Fuck you.
Cell anemia. All of these things are caused by mutations. Mutations are what cause death. Ultimately, we will die from mutations if we live long enough.
No. Mutations can be deleterious, but they aren't always deleterious. They can be beneficial.
As humans. But according to Darwinists, mutations are what cause us to evolve.
Here's Darwinists again. That's not a thing. Just makes it sound like we're religious as well.
It's what makes us better, because beneficial
mutations do not make us better. There is context that is necessary. Mutations allow us to survive better in our particular environment. If they are, okay, mutations that survive, mutations that are beneficial to a specific environment. They are not good or bad. They are either beneficial or deleterious. Or they can do nothing at all to the actual survival. To say that all mutations are deleterious is just stupid. And he gives no evidence for it either. All he says is autism, Down syndrome, and one other thing. I don't remember what it was. He's not actually saying anything with any proof. He's just saying words and assuming they're true.
Mutations get selected, and those beneficial mutations benefit populations more and more and more and more, and so those organisms become better in its survival of the fittest.
They become better in that environment. They do not become better than other species. They become better in their environment for them. I want to make that clear.
The fittest organisms will reproduce and create even more fit organisms. Well, that's not true. Mutations aren't going to make...
It's not that the fittest give birth to the fittest, give birth to the fittest. Like, it kind of is, but that's not the whole thing. There are other mechanisms in which evolution works.
Make us evolve from a frog to a prince, or from rocks to man. That's just not...
To say rocks to man is boiling it down to such an infinitely small point that it might as well be a fucking black hole. Rocks eroded, producing the chemicals needed to form life. That's abiogenesis. That life then created itself over and over and over. In that process, mutations occurred that made the copies different from the original. Over time, the copies that were able to survive better in that particular environment made copies over and over and over till you have multicellular organisms that coexist. The cells in those multicellular organisms coexist until they get more and more complex over time, and then those more complex beings over time become more and more complex over time, and eventually become different creatures entirely.
Works. That's not how biology works. That's not how science works. Science.
You are not a scientist. I'm not a scientist either. But you're saying that's not how science works without giving evidence of how science works or why that's not how science works.
It shows us that everything produces after its kind, and that organisms will reproduce other organisms that...
I understand I've said that's not how that works, but for the most part, I'm saying that because he fundamentally misunderstands a topic when I say that. And there's really nothing I can do except go into a whole lecture on how it actually works. And this series has already gone on for 4 fucking parts, and I'm not even done.
Still remain in the family. So if you have a cat, it's going to create more cats. If you have a dog, it's going to create more dogs. There are limitations to what mutations can do. Mutations can only cause us to devolve over time and not evolve.
Literally no evidence. You are making a statement, right? Now you have to back up that statement with evidence. What is your evidence that mutations do not cause evolution? Because there have been many studies done proving that we can actually see evolution happening. There were, I forget what they were, I think there were like mice in the, I forget where, but it was a place where there was sand. There was light-colored sand, and there was dark-covered ground. And over time, the mice evolved for most of the population to be either or color to blend in with the surroundings. And this was over the course of less than 50 years. And they, for the most part, changed their fur color so that they could survive.
And this is why evolution is not true. It is not part of
Sorry that was vague. It's been a while.
Science. Because if you look at the human genome, you're going to find that there's more mutations in the offspring than in the parent. That means that mutations are...
Yeah, more mutations happen. That doesn't mean that there all in there. There's a limited amount of, well, you'd call it code, that can fit onto DNA and RNA. It's not ever growing with new mutations. Certain mutations override old ones.
They're accumulating mutations.
That's why when you have a lizard that over time becomes a snake, you don't have a lizard with a really fucking long tail. The lizard doesn't have legs anymore, but it slithers. Now that's not an actual thing that happened. I'm not sure. It might, but that was just an analogy off the top of my head. Don't take that literally.
Mutations cause us to die, and mutations will eventually cause us to become extinct if the Lord doesn't come back and save us before then, which He
didn't outright say it, but he essentially just said that mutations are sin that need to be cleansed. And by extension, because of what he said earlier, he said autism is a sin that needs to be cleansed. This guy can eat my whole ass nuts. Go fuck yourself, Matt Powell. Go fuck yourself.
promises to do. Check this out.
Alright, I'm gonna end this part here. Because I don't want it to take fucking forever to upload. It's probably going to take fucking forever to upload. But I'm gonna start the next episode right after I upload this one.